with section 1. Section 1's over. So now we're moving to section 2. For those of you that haven't figured out the structure yet, we'll go through some notes. You're going to do an assessment. You're going to take a quiz. And then eventually, after we do 3 or 4 sections, you're going to take a chapter test. And we're going to review that chapter test. Right? That's how it works. So after you do an assessment, please expect there to be a quiz every time. No mercy. All right? So we're going to start with section 2 here. As you can see, there's a few things we have started here. Formation of government. So if you're watching the live link, you should be able to watch this. This should be happening on your screen. Is that correct?
No, we have
What do you mean you had to click present?
yeah, you were just talking about it. Right?
I mean, that's better, at least I'm gonna.
Yeah, because we don't have to keep up.
Yeah, you don't want to click present. You want to join my presentation. You want to join my presentation. No, because I'm just going to close it out. Because if you skip ahead of me, I will block it from you.
How do you go back? How do you go back?
So just click the link again on Google Classroom. Be able to click the link again on Google All right. Well, how about this? Till I figure that out, you have to follow along with me if you want to watch it on your screen. You'll just click it. All right. Don't go ahead of me, or I will lock you out. Okay. Thanks. Pretty awesome. All right. So, what are the 3 major government systems? As you can see, they are right here on the board. Unitary, federal, and confederal systems are the 3 major types. So what are the 3 major government systems? First one we're going to talk about is the unitary system. So the unitary system gives all key powers to the national government. It can still consist of other levels of government like state and local, but all the key powers go to the national government. So can anybody think of an example of a government that would be a unitary system that exists in the world today? Our government? Incorrect. Our government is not a unitary system. North Korea would be a unitary system. Russia would be a unitary system. It is basically where the national or federal government can tell anyone and everyone what to do, even the local and state governments. Cannot do that here in the United States. All right? Can't. And it would also be this example. All right? There's a lot of examples of unitary systems. Even the United Kingdom is a unitary system. All right? So being a unitary system doesn't necessarily mean that you're a bad government or that you are a dictatorship or that you are a communist. It just is the structure of your government type. So it gives all key powers to the national government. You can still have those local governments, but they pretty much just listen to the federal government. So the United Kingdom. How many of you know which countries are in the United Kingdom? England, Wales. 2 more. It's 2 more than I thought anybody would know it's Titus, so proud of you. 2 more. England, Wales, not France. France is a part of France.
Oh, I know.
Ireland.
England, Wales, Northern Ireland. The rest of Ireland is its own independent country. And Scotland. England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland make up the United Kingdom. England, Scotland, and Wales make up Great Britain. So Great Britain and the United Kingdom are not the same thing. They are all different. All right? And France is also a unitary system. France is a unitary system. However, France is their own contingent, meaning they are their own country. They don't need anybody else. All right? And Italy as well is also a unitary system. So the reason I bring these up here is because when you think of unitary system, one national government being in control of everything that happens, your mind always goes to people like Hitler and Mussolini and Kim Jong-un, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. It can mean it is also a democracy. All right? So just because the government system isn't what you think it should be doesn't mean that it can't exist in other types of systems. All right? Here we have the federal system. The power of government is split between the state and the national government. Each level has its own power separate from the other level. All right? So in this case, both groups have certain powers that the other group does not have. Can anybody think of countries that are examples of a federal system? US. Yeah, I like the abbreviation for the United States of America, right? Yeah, US, America. We are a federal system. We are the largest example of a federal system. I'll give you a few examples. How many of you know what the federal speed limit is? There isn't one. Each state is allowed to set their own speed limits based on whatever guidelines they want. It doesn't matter, right? There used to be a federal speed limit of 55. That was as fast as you could go on any road in the United States. However, it went to the Supreme Court and it was ruled that the federal government doesn't have any power over roads. That's not a power that they were given. So each individual state government is in charge of their speed limits. Pearson.
So what you're saying, if there was a road and the states have it all under control, let's say Texas decided to, you know what, I want this big road to be as fast as you want to go. Like,
Sure, fast they want. Texas roads are ruled by the Texas government. Ohio roads are ruled by the Ohio government. All right? Same thing as the drinking age. How many of you know what the federal drinking age is? There isn't one. Each individual state sets their drinking age because the federal government is not allowed to set the drinking age. So what is the legal drinking age in every state? It is 21, but only because each state has set it at 21, not because the federal government said they have to. There's a little bit of backstory with that. The federal government said, hey, here's a bunch of money, states, if your drinking age is 21. So all the states were like, hey, we'll raise it to 21 and get this bunch of money to fix our roads and stuff. All right? So they sort of conned them into raising their drinking age to 21. But they did do that without being forced to. And the federal government can't force them because that's not one of the powers they have. However, what are some powers that the federal government has? Taxes. Taxes are what's called congruent powers. What that means, and you're not wrong, is the federal government is allowed to collect income taxes, but so is the state government. Both levels are allowed to collect taxes, right? And in Ohio, we pay federal and state taxes. Texas and Florida are the only states where you do not pay any state income taxes. But they are high states to live in, meaning they're very expensive to live in, which means people travel there and they make up for that lost tax revenue with an increase in sales tax revenue or people buying things. So they make people who travel to their state make up the difference in taxes that they otherwise are missing from their income taxes. All right? So what would be a power that the federal government would have that the state governments do not have? Here's a good example. How about same-sex marriage? How many of you know that individual states are no longer allowed to differentiate on or make any changes in any way, shape, or form at all to couples that are married in a same-sex relationship? Not only is it legal, it is a constitutionally protected right. What that means is the Supreme Court of the United States determined that under the 14th Amendment, which is the pursuit of happiness and that all individuals are created equal, was not being upheld in same-sex marriage bans in states. So the Supreme Court said, you are depriving individuals of that 14th Amendment right. So basically what happened was they ruled marriage as a 14th Amendment right for you to have. So now states can't say no. They're not allowed to. Period. They get no VIT. No, presidents don't pass laws. Presidents have no power. All right? Yeah, there are 535 people who passed that law. You can go thank them individually if you wish to do so. It might take you a while, though. All right? Here's another one that gets a little weird. Weed. How many of you know that marijuana is not allowed to be made legal in states? States are not allowed to say, hey, we're going to make marijuana legal or illegal. It is not an American state. All right? As punishment for saying that, Jada, you're not allowed to speak for the next 3 minutes. No words. Thank you. That's your punishment. Okay, so How can states do this? Well, here's the answer, the short answer. The federal government has supreme power because it is a federal law. What that means is if the federal government wants to go into Colorado and California and Washington and other states that have legalized recreational medicinal marijuana, arrest everybody and take them to prison, that can happen. They can do that today. What that means is if you live in Colorado where marijuana is legal and you test for marijuana on a drug test, the federal government can come and arrest you. And you can go to prison. Depending on the amount that you have with you, it could be up to 10 years or a life sentence. So let me put it another way. All the people that are growing medicinal marijuana, medical marijuana, are also at risk because medical marijuana is also not legal. So that means physicians that are prescribing marijuana, prison. People that are growing medical marijuana, prison. Okay? So what is stopping this from happening? Well, so far, President Obama has said that if states, former President Obama has said if states want to make marijuana legal, that he's not going to enforce that particular federal law in those states. However, Donald Trump on a few occasions has said that he thinks that we should enforce those laws. But he has not done so yet, right? So pretty much that's the only power the president has over you as a citizen, an individual inside the United States, is enforcing laws. That's pretty much it. Everything else, all the other powers that the president has are outside of the U.S., like military intervention, border security, stuff like that, all happen outside of the U.S., right? So America is that federal system. Good, we're all so happy. Confederal system, aka a confederacy. Now, this is not what you think of. Actually, you've got about 1 minute and 20 seconds left of silence, Jada. Pearson started the timer for you. All right, so the confederal system, aka confederacy. Now, when you hear the word confederacy, you think of the southern United States, and you would not be wrong. That just happens to be the pronoun they were referred to by. The Confederacy in the southern United States is a confederacy by definition, but that's not the only confederacy. So what I mean by that is it's a loose collection of independent states, and each power has sovereignty over themselves. And states do come together for protection. So if this sounds familiar, it should, because this is exactly what happened in the United States when we were fighting the Revolutionary War. Each state or colony was their own country. They had their own currency, they had their own laws, and there was no higher power than them except for the crown, England, the king, right? But other than that, they were their total and complete independent states. And when we declared independence, then we did have complete and independent power for each state. But once we were under threat from England, taxation without representation, we decided to come together and fight as a group. Right? So we still had our own laws, we still had our own currency in each individual state, but we decided to come together for protection. So what's an example of confederal system? Colonial United States. Old United States is an example of the confederal system or the confederacy. But there's also one more example. It's called the European Union. Now, for those of you that don't know what the European Union is, it is a collection of European countries who have said that they will use the same currency. They will be under most of the same financial laws. And they will also allow any citizen from a member country to work in their country without penalty or without having to go through a customs situation. Okay? So all of these countries on the list are here. So if you have any questions, that's Hungary, and Spain, and Ireland, Bulgaria, Hungary, the Netherlands, Lithuania, Sweden, Portugal, the United Kingdom, which is no longer a part of the European Union. They left recently. Finland, Luxembourg, Latvia, Denmark. I believe this is the Czech Republic, Belgium, Italy, Poland, Denmark. All kinds of places, Greece. So there are a lot of members to this place. So all of these countries have their own laws and their own regulations, but they also come together as one big group when it comes to their currency, the euro, which is the second most valuable currency in the world, only behind the British pound used in Great Britain. That is the most valuable currency in the world. So it goes the British pound, the euro, the American dollar. Are the three most valuable currencies in the world, viable currencies digital currencies fluctuate in value pretty consistently and aren't considered a viable currency by any government to date, so we can't include those in my statistics here. Pearson. It depends. The least valued currency ever was the German Deutschmark during just previously to World War II. So it was literally cheaper to burn your money than it was to pay for gas or coal to heat. So, for example, it would cost you about 2 Deutschmarks to get a loaf of bread before the inflation started. It would cost you about 4 to 5 trillion Deutschmarks to get a loaf of bread about 10 years later.
That's a lot.
So that means if you save your money your entire life, it's not worth anything. You wasted it. So actually, if you didn't know this, Hitler won Time Magazine's Person of the Year in 1936 because he came in and said, hey, let's get rid of this currency. He reduced inflation. Germany became an economic powerhouse. They were looked to for manufacturing purposes. Germany became huge under Adolf Hitler before 1939 when he invaded Poland, right? But he made the Reichsmark, which is what the currency that was used during Hitler's time there.
What's it called now?
They use the euro in Germany. They're a part of the European Union. All right? So, yeah, that's the biggest inflation that's ever happened. All right? Any questions over the confederal system? So think about it this way. The unitary system is one big bad person that passes power down. The federal system is 2 people, a state or a federal and a state, or a federal and a local government that serve side by side. And the confederal system is a bunch of powerhouses, like 20 powerhouses that all make their own laws but have an agreement for protection. All right? Awesome. Next thing we're going to get to is, what is a constitution? What are the major purposes of a constitution? All right? So, little known fact. The United States has the oldest constitution in the world. The oldest constitution of any country that has ever existed. And I know you hear a lot, like the United States is a relatively young country, but I'm going to tell you something that's going to shock you. The United States is 100 years older than Germany.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why I did that. Thanks for pointing it out. Appreciate it. I will change that. Yeah. So the United States is Destiny. Go back.
That's creepy.
All right. So the United States, while we are relatively young, we are older than a lot of countries that exist throughout the world. Right? So we're not necessarily a young country anymore. We're more like a young adult country. Okay? Young adult type of country. Another little known fact about constitutions, the United Kingdom doesn't have one. They are a democracy without a constitution. But their government is called a constitutional monarchy. How weird is that? They have no constitution, but they're a constitutional monarchy. Who knows? A constitution is a plan that provides for the rules of government. It lays out what you can and cannot do as a government. Right? It says you may do this or you may do that. It tells the government what it is allowed to do and what it is not allowed to do at any given time. It can be written or unwritten. All right, so here's where Great Britain comes into play. We have a written constitution, right? We have a preamble which introduces the goals and principles of our government. We have the articles. There are 7 of them that set out the rules. Article 1 is the legislative branch, 2 is the executive, 3 is the judicial branch, 4 is the full faith and credit clause, 5 tells us how to amend the Constitution, 6, because I love it, is the supremacy clause, which states that the federal government always overpowers state governments in matters where power is shared. And the 7th is the ratification clause, which says after 7 of the 13 colonies ratifies this Constitution, it becomes fully functional. And then we have our 27 amendments in a row, right? So our Constitution is definitely written down. We can look at it. We can touch it. We can read it. We can interact with it. An unwritten constitution exists in Great Britain. Remember I said they didn't have a constitution? While they technically don't, we refer to their system of laws and the structure that the government has laid out through years and years and years and years to sort of represent their constitution. So it's unwritten. So Great Britain and the United Kingdom as a whole don't really make laws and infringe upon your personal rights. However, the government does have pretty supreme power. If you've ever been in the United Kingdom, you know that they have cameras that cover pretty much every square inch of every public roadway and sidewalk. And that's run by the government, right? So they can do that. That's why that was the setting for one of the Fast and Furious movies. It's because that's a big part of what's going on there. They must always remain incomplete. That means constitutions are living documents. That means that at any moment in time, if something changes in the needs of society or the citizens of that country or state, that constitution can be changed to meet those needs or change those certain amendments to the Constitution. All right? Examples of this were in the 1970s. People believed that the voting age being 21 was too high. So, good. So they came together. They created, what did I spell wrong? I spelled once wrong. Yeah, I still don't see it. Oh, once. There it is. I was thinking once, like O-N-C-E. Yeah. All right. So in the 1970s, a bunch of people got together. They formed a constitutional convention, which is allowed under Article 5, and they changed the voting age from 21 to 18. But these constitutions usually occur in what are called constitutional governments, believe it or not. Yeah, I know, it's sort of weird. Constitutions and constitutional governments, yeah. Problem is constitutional governments don't always have constitutions that are written. They can be unwritten, much like the United Kingdom, so it's not as easy as you would think. So if I ask you to list all of the following constitutional governments and you don't include the United Kingdom, you would get it wrong because they are a constitutional government. But it's an unwritten constitution. All right, we're going to be looking at the Constitution pretty in depth throughout this class. We're literally going to read the Constitution in many examples. It's hard to understand. It is. A lot of people say, oh, you don't even read the Constitution in schools anymore. No, because you can't understand it. It's really hard to understand. Very difficult. So you're going to read it. You're going to tell me what you think it means, and then I'm going to tell you what it actually means. Any questions? Pearson, is this stupid or what?
No, it's actually not a stupid question. Well,
Fire away.
It might be to you. I don't know what your perception is.